Michael Dell, founder, CEO, chairman of Dell Technologies. Always good to talk to you, Michael.
Great to be with you again, John.
So you got a big investor day today. I want to talk about the numbers, but before that, I got to go big picture with you. I'm not going to ask if we're in a stock market bubble, but are we in a state of overheated data center build out that could be getting ahead of itself?
The things that we watch out for are signs that, for example, customers are buying things that they don't actually have an immediate need for, and we don't see that at all. In fact, we see kind of the opposite. And I think what's underlying this is the enormous growth in demand for tokens. And so our customers are immediately deploying whatever infrastructure they get. The limiting factor for many of them seems to be, can they get the power into the buildings to supply the energy required?
When you're talking about tokens, you're talking about just that base ability to get work done with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the way this works is you've got these large language models and now multimodal systems and agents and multi-agent systems, and as you advance from the single shot, LLM to these more agent and multi-agent systems, the number of tokens just explodes. And so the demand for computing power is tremendous. Obviously storage, data storage and networking as well. And so, our server networking business last year grew at 58%. Last quarter grew at 69%. And, I'm sure at some point there'll be too many of these things built, but we don't see any signs of that. And look, there have been periods in the past where there's like a digestion cycle, but based on the demand signal we see and what we're hearing from customers, we're watching, carefully understand what's going on. It seems like the demand is very solid.
So let's talk about that specifically. I believe you boosted your annual revenue target by 4 percentage points at the low end, 5 at the high end. What should investors read into that and what it signals about your expectations on the durability of demand?
Sure. We have greater confidence in the long-term revenue growth prospects for both our ISG business, which is the AI servers, traditional servers, storage and networking, and all the infrastructure that goes around that, and also PCs with the replacement cycle, the AI PCs. And we also essentially doubled our EPS target, to 15% plus a year. We've achieved that 15% a year over the last 5 years, which is well above our target. So we're raising the EPS target, raising the revenue growth targets, and we also extended the duration of our commitment to grow our dividend by at least 10% a year through FY30. And look, in the last 5 years, we have returned 97% of adjusted free cash flow, or $14.5 billion, to our shareholders in the form of share repurchase and dividends. And we're committed to returning at least 80%. And so, we have a great business. It continues to grow. We think the earnings per share durability of the business is quite solid.
On the underlying technology, you've talked a lot lately about Dell AI Factory, just being able to deliver that full productivity experience in AI to data center customers. How much do you think you can differentiate on energy consumption through stuff like liquid cooling, which you've also talked about? How much room is there to overcome that energy bottleneck?
There's a ton of work that goes into optimizing these systems, and increasingly we're designing the cold plates and the cooling distribution units and enclosed rear door heat exchangers that dramatically reduce the overall energy consumption. And this is important because the running cost over time is heavily impacted by energy, and there's not enough of it in the world, and that's a constraint. So, put all that together, and again, with AI, we have really 3 sources of demand. We have the the tier 2 CSPs, all the neo clouds. We have sovereign AI, and then we of course have enterprise and commercial AI, which is our traditional customer base, and they're just at the beginning of the S-curve adoption of this technology, and we think that's going to grow substantially over the next several years.
How much of a gating factor is energy, whether it's at the grid level or just the raw availability of gigawatts to power these things? We've got these announcements from Sam Altman, mostly Sam Altman, OpenAI, about tens of gigawatts practically that they want to build, but they'll openly admit we don't know exactly where the power is going to come from.
It's the clear constraint that we hear about from our customers, including OpenAI, and many customers, in fact, will tell us, well, don't deliver it until this day because we won't have the power in the building, to support it. And so if I look at the amount of energy that is expected to be required, there's obviously a ton of investments going into power generation across all sorts of different modalities. You talk about that on the show all the time. And there's a lot needed. And I think that's certainly one of the big constraints. What we can do is engineer these systems so they just use as little power as possible. But at the end of the day, if you're going to generate tens of trillions of tokens and you're going to create intelligence and drive the economy forward, you're going to need computing power and energy.
Larry Ellison, the two of you are both mentioned as TikTok investors for the U.S. spinoff of that. And maybe that's one of the things that's a consumer experience, that's AI-driven, that's hugely popular, that people really do attach to right now. How do you see the importance of that TikTok restructuring and what an app like that potentially does for the whole ecosystem?
I heard the president's comments on that, and I don't have any other comment other than to acknowledge what he said.
Well, just on TikTok itself then, and not your personal involvement, how do you view, whether it's through photo filters or the AI-driven algorithm that influences how people experience that, how that influences the culture around people's understanding of AI?
Yeah, it raises a lot of interesting questions. At Dell Technologies, what we're focused on is more of the foundational layers of providing the computing power and the networking and the storage that allow these systems to run. And look, I think there's going to be an incredible variety of uses for these models. Some of them will be great, some of them might not be so great, right? It's not really what we do at Dell Technologies, right? We sort of provide the picks and shovels, if you will, to allow all this infrastructure to run. And look, I think going back to what I was saying earlier, this is just bringing all this data to life. In the next couple of years, we'll create more data than has ever existed in the world, right? And that data will be brought to life. A lot of data previously was just there. It was just stored and protected. Nobody ever knew what to do with it or had any tools to do with it. Now we've got tools that are bringing all this to life.
Michael, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Some big projections and numbers.